6 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order on October 12th, and we'll begin with roll call.
Charles Blacklands.
Here.
Reed Campbell.
Here.
Tom Hageland.
Here.
Sue Kern.
Here.
Ruth Nelson.
Here.
Bob Nystrom.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. So we'll look for a motion to approve the agenda. There was no amendments to it.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Director Nystrom, second by Director Nelson for approval of the agenda. Any discussion? Not those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next up will be our public input time.
Wade was here.
We've got one taker.
One
All
take.
right.
Still wearing his shorts back.
Well, we just came, we had football pictures, and then 6th and 7th grade are on the turf, and they're playing, so I gotta do this, and then we'll head back down there. Thanks for having me again. Appreciate the time. I just wanted to give you an update on how our BYA football program went this fall with our COVID stuff in place. We had 125 kids participate. And we had, with each team, there were 6, we had a COVID coach. So every day the kids would come, that COVID coach would take their temperature. We would jot it down in a book so we could do contact tracing. And no parents during practice. Games, Saturdays and Mondays, parents would come. If it was down on the turf, they would have to stay up top, not on the field. And during games, we had areas where the teams were, and then the parents social distance around on the outside. Maybe 100 people at most during the games, and glad to report we didn't have any instance. If a kid didn't attend school because they weren't feeling good, part of the agreement is they couldn't come to practice. And if a kid showed up with symptoms or anything, we automatically sent them home. But glad to know we didn't have any issues, so I wanted to share that with you. And the second piece, just wanted to follow up and let you know that we're still very interested. BBA and BYA are hopeful that we can get into the gyms and be part of the Brainerd community. I did want to share with each of you, if you don't mind me coming around and handing you the waivers, Matt Castle, and then we had two attorneys help us put this together through the Minnesota State High School League. And create, if you look at the 6th paragraph, the second one on the back page.
Thank you.
We included the school district.
Yeah, he did send that to us too.
Just to add that piece, and part of the waiver, I know, Charles, you said it, if we have to do a waiver, sometimes, you're wondering why we're doing it. But I think the other piece, when we do a waiver, we're guaranteeing that we're gonna follow through too. That's where the negligence and liability, comes into play. We're promising you that we're gonna do it. If we don't, we're negligent. And I think that's the big piece, that we stand by and we'll follow through, and we showed that in our first go-around. So I just wanted to kind of bring you guys up to date and show you that we can do this and make this work. Okay, that's it.
All right. Good. Thank you, Wade.
Yep, all right, thanks, guys.
Good job.
And is it a vote?
All right, great. Thank you. Next up will be approval of our minutes from our September 28th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Director Campbell, second by Director Kern for approval of the September 8th board meeting minutes. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next item is approval of our consent calendar.
I'll move approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
Motion by Director Nelson, second by Director Campbell for approval of the consent calendar. Any discussion? Not those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next item will be a couple of presentations, and we're going to start with Jacqueline Kalis, who is a school board candidate. So welcome.
Hi,
Hi, and welcome.
my name is Jackie Callis. I'm running for school board, and I will tell you a little bit about myself. I moved out here with my husband about 2 years ago from Boston, Massachusetts. I've been an educator for my entire career after college. I taught middle school math and science. I've taught high school biology, as well as helping kids find jobs and placing them in internships. I've worked at Boys and Girls Clubs, YMCA's, running STEM programming, which is my passion. I recently just opened my own business, JC's Innovative Creations, which provides workshops and classes to youth throughout the community. Right now I'm working with Minnesota Makerspace, and I've got a homeschool co-op, and I'm in the process of getting some classes started up at the YMCA, doing robotics and drones and fun things like that. If I become a member of the school board, one of my passions is just making sure that all of the kids have the resources that they need to be successful, and especially during this time with COVID, that's especially important, I believe. So that's one of the things that I'd really like to be a part of, as well as fiscal responsibility and just kind of, taking what we have and just, making it better. I think we have a great school system. I do substitute teach in the system, and I enjoy all of the kids that I work with, and the teachers and the staff are just incredibly awesome. So I don't think that there's still a lot to do, but I think we have a great start to make it even better.
All right, great. Thank you. Thank you for coming, and good luck in 3 weeks, I guess. So, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, next up will be a COVID-19 update from Heidi and others, perhaps.
Probably just going to be Heidi and me tonight.
That's
so.
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
Good evening, Director Hagelin and members of the board. Here we are again. Let me go back. Our presentations move forward. Start at the beginning. With our current COVID learning model update. So as we're aware, we're just coming off a reset at the high school. We came back last Thursday. Activities started on last Wednesday. And it's been great to kind of have everybody back doing what they love to do and having our students back in person. We've been watching the numbers closely. We had the significant cluster outbreak, so that's caused lots of conversations to be occurring with the Department of Health, with Public Health, and most recently, we had a consultation meeting because of where our county numbers were headed on Friday. And that's what Lane and I really want to review with you, is what all took place at that consultation meeting. We had 2 members from the Minnesota Department of Education. We had 3 members from the Department of Health. We had Crow Wing County Public Health, Sourcewell, which is part of our regional response team, and then Lane, myself, Angie, and Corey, I believe. We're all part of these conversations. And so this is kind of the current number that's going to be released on this coming Thursday, October 15th? So we're hitting that range, which causes us to have to take pause and really look at our learning models. We're going to land over that 30. So when we look at the guidelines, that would be having our elementary and hybrid and pushing our secondary into distance learning. But we also know this is just one data point. So when we approach numbers like this is what we've learned now for the first time, is really getting that in-depth consultation with multiple members, Department of Health, Department of Education, Public Health, and then our regional response team. Kind of currently where we're at. So our numbers in quarantine, these were released out to you. We've had 335 students that were in quarantine who returned. Of those 335 that were quarantined, 27 of them were positive. As of last Friday, we still had 78 students that were quarantined, and 7 of those students are positive. So we're seeing a significant number of students that are coming out of that quarantine, and again, that large numbers from that cluster outbreak. If you look at, we highlighted, that's the reset date of 9/24, so you can see why the Department of Health recommended really going into that reset for the 9/12. We were seeing huge spikes in the students and the staff numbers. Since that reset, you're starting to see our trend data come down. And to date, we have had 135 staff that have quarantined. Right now, we had 12 staff come back today, which was awesome, but we also had another 9 go out on Saturday and Sunday, and we've had 4 more today. So we're seeing about 28 staff that are still out for symptoms and testing. Positives, again, here's when you look at that slide, when you see the huge peak in the students, that's again why the recommendation was to do the reset. Since we did that reset, look what's happened to our data. We've seen our positive cases significantly decrease. When we were reaching that positive, we were sitting at that 28 number. Now in the last 2 weeks, we've only had 7. And as of right now, we haven't had any positive cases back in the high school model where we reset. All of our buildings have experienced a positive case within their learning community with the exception of Harrison and Riverside to date. And again, looking at that reset, you're consistently seeing those number of positive cases going down. We have had a couple more student positive cases come to play, but it's been from parents being positive. Those kids have been quarantined for almost 2 weeks, waiting for the testing and their symptoms from their parents. So we haven't had any more of those trickle into the school community at this point. So the question of whether the reset was a good idea, the data is telling us it was a very positive move to make.
And I'll take it from here. I have to reiterate what Heidi said, that our meeting on Friday was really, really great because, we kind of look at this, the numbers from Crow Wing County and, is that enough to tell us that we need to go into a distance learning model? And we were all hoping that we weren't going to have to do it. And when we brought all the data points to the team, when we met on that conference call, everybody reiterated the fact that we did the reset when we had the cluster was probably the best thing that we could have done because we would have most likely had to have been in a distance learning model by this time had we not done that. And so we felt pretty good about that even though that was a really hard thing to do, it was short term. And now we're back in action and our kids are back learning with their teachers and the sports and activities are back and going. As Heidi said, since October 2nd, we've had no additional student cases in grades through 9, like we talked about. We've had a few cases with our employees. Most of them, though, have not been linked with close contact or exposure within the school. We've had a couple that we've been dealing with today that came about over the weekend, but for the most part, it hasn't made any kind of a separation where we've had to close down a classroom or anything like that to point. As I said, the evidence was clear that the restart was really helpful because it stopped that cycle that was going through our grades 9 through 12, and as the charts showed, the data is really good on our behalf. We also really wanted to make sure that we talked a lot about being respectful of knowing that safety and security was the #1 goal of our students and staff, to consider the impact that any decision we made would have on our students, on our families, and our entire community while we approach any learning model. And one of the things that we talked about is that we'd like to not have to make abrupt changes, and they all reiterated as well that we don't need to make these changes abruptly. We're going to be looking for sources of data to help before we make those decisions, unless there's something like a cluster that we had or a serious outbreak or something that could cause issues. Other than that, it is totally our plan to take our time and to make sure that we're making the right decision as we've done thus far. And then they commended us many times, commended the Board of Education, the school district, the teachers, the administration, everyone for being really diligent in this process. And so I wanted everyone to know that as well, that they had a lot of really positive things to say. And we talked about then what is the difference between, as far as following the different models and so on, and why is this different? And so much of it has to be that we have been diligent throughout the process, and therefore they didn't feel like that we were going against the learning plan. In fact, we were looking at the umbrella sources of the data sources. I like to say that it kind of reminds me of a stool. And if you have one leg of the stool, and that would be the cases in our county, that stool won't stand up. But as we're looking at what is the data, what are the number of people that that have been out just with symptoms and have come back? What are the number of cases and how many of our students and staff have come back? What is the data showing? And pretty soon you have all those legs of the stool so that you can make that best decision. So moving forward, they had some recommendations as well. They said, we are just fine with the school district staying in hybrid. We feel that you have done all of those pieces to make that stool stand up. You know what your data is as far as people that are in quarantine. You know what the data is as far as your numbers. You're watching it carefully. You're doing careful tracking of all of your cases, and they just felt that we had been extremely diligent in this process. But there were a few things that they wanted us to keep in mind. First of all, if we always need to keep at the forefront what the main goal is, and that is, first and foremost, it has to be the safety of our kids and our staff. And we're going to continue to make the right decisions in that way. They want us also to continue to partner with our regional and state people. And like we met with many of the union members today, and we said some of the people who we're on with daily, some of them it's weekly. MDE, it was just now that we had, we're trying to make a decision. This was a great time for us to reconnect with MDE, and we had great support from them. They said that we also need to consider the ability to trace and isolate close contacts, testing staff levels, and extracurricular activities, which we've been watching very, very carefully, and they asked us to continue to do that. They did say, however, that in the event of a secondary distance learning, to include all of your grade levels at that building, and that is something that we would need to talk about regarding Forest View if that happened because of where our models are. But they said for a number of reasons. One is you can keep all of those kids together and do that synchronous lessons throughout the grade levels. Your teachers, your staffing levels will be easier to manage. Plus, we also talked about the fact that food service, transportation, all of those pieces would help us with staffing. But that's just something that they've asked us to think about if we end up having to go into that model, which we're not recommending at all tonight. Also, they told us to watch athletics and activities very carefully because these are often the driver for restrictive practices, even though we do our best to ensure the safety using the protocols and such that are in place, but to be very careful of that because there is a lot of body fluids and such the kids exchange when they hit a ball or play football and helmets against each other and so on. And they said just make sure that you're ensuring the safety practices and watch those groups carefully. If there is a case that you might have to quarantine the whole team, but that doesn't mean you have to close school, but just watch them more carefully. They also said that in partnership, we must all implement the safety protocols, and I think you all saw the letter that about 15 of us superintendents from our region sent out this past week. I want you to know that we have been having calls for the last 3 days throughout the state. The superintendents want to use that letter. And so we're feeling really good about the fact that we're thanking people for practicing these cases because our number one goal is we want to keep our kids in school. And so we're pretty proud of that, that we took that initiative. And then also they reiterated once again, show caution when changing learning models. Don't do it rapidly. And I know, Tom, you and I talked about it. Bob, you and I have talked about that recently. And we will definitely take that into consideration. It doesn't mean you have to do it overnight unless it's something very seriously. And honestly, we're just all part of the solution to keep our kids in school. So it's really exciting tonight. We were trying to keep this more brief because we know we've gotten quite lengthy lately, but it's we're really proud today of the work that's been done by the school district. And we just want to thank everyone for the diligent oversight, their analysis of the data, all the data points that we have, the teamwork that we have in our school. And so it's our recommendation tonight to stay and remain in the hybrid model, and we believe that that is the safest, best model for our students and our staff at this time.
Yeah, and I do want to give it, so Michelle Moritz with Crow Wing County Public Health has been wonderful to work with. She's now being able to get more deeper into the data, so we can attach kids per district by zip code, so we can really look closely as to where those outbreaks and those clusters are. I think we've been proven we have the ability, when something happens, we can respond, which was also one of the reasons that the team was very supportive of us remaining where we're at. And Michelle gave a data point too that was concerning. She expressed, because she did all the community contact tracing based from the cluster, that she was convinced if we wouldn't have reset, that more than likely we'd have been looking at a number over 50 on the 15th, which when you see that number 50, that would push everybody into distance. So again, the ability to connect with the experts so quickly and respond is very beneficial, and they've been very supportive. So we thank you for your support as well.
Yeah, thanks for saying that, because I forgot that. And Michelle is listening and available if anybody has any questions, but it has really been a privilege to work with her and the county team. She's been pulling the superintendents of Crow Wing County together every week, and then she's been working with the regional superintendents to make sure that we're all on the same page in the region, and then working closely with MDH and MDE on our behalf. And so we thank her too for being our partner in this process. So anyway, our plan is to continue with the hybrid following MEA break or Ed Minnesota break, and we will continue to watch this very carefully, and we really feel like we've got a good handle on it right now. So
Excellent, good,
that's our
thank you.
report.
Thank you.
We all have smiles under our masks.
Yes, under the mask.
Can I just add one more thing? I think it's so important for the community to know how much work you have, all the staff and the teachers have put in, and I know how stressful, I mean, it's for everybody, it's stressful, but especially for Heidi, you, and Angie, yeah. Just how stressful, and the principals and the teachers too, and all the extra work. So I want the community, if you see any of these people out with their masks on, please give them a big high five. Well, I can't high five, whatever. A big, yeah. So, because, we really appreciate all the work you've done. And I know it's been many, many, many extra hours.
It has been. But our kids are here, and that's what we want.
Yeah.
And we're figuring it all out.
We
so
are. We
it's-
have processes, so that's good.
We're going in the right direction,
Yeah.
so.
I'd also like to say, I just want to thank you for your leadership during this time. You know, leadership is not defined by how you perform during normal times. Leadership is defined by how you perform in difficult times. And you have really met that challenge. And your legacy will be based probably on this. And I think when we look back, we will be so appreciative of what you did.
But it's, you know, like I've said so many times, it's having the right team at the right time. And we are the right team at the right time. And Heidi and Angie have worked so hard, and Corey and everybody. And it's just everybody's given 150%, and it proves it. And, you know, we're getting calls all day long with, what did you do in cases like this? How would you handle this and such? And so we don't have the answers. Nobody has the answers to this, but we really think that we're doing the best we can and leading the charge. And I'm really proud of our school again. And our teachers, what they're doing this hybrid is no fun for anybody. And we met with staff today, and we know that there's some things that that it's different. Like, we have more students in distance learning than we ever dreamt would be there. So our distance learning teachers might have 82 people on their caseload. And then meanwhile, our classes, because we're able to social distance and such, are much more reasonable numbers. But we need to look out for some of those people. And so we talked today about setting up a plan now mid-semester of trying to make some changes to help them out, because, you know, we didn't know what to expect, and now we just have to do some modifications. But it's the right team at the right time. We appreciate the support from the board. We couldn't do it if we didn't have your support. And so together we're going to get through this, and then we're going to celebrate on the other side of it.
Good.
So, yeah, thank you.
All right, good. Thank you. Next up, we'll have a project update. Damien and Justin.
Yeah, district and the only female. You noticed that?
Okay. Good evening. Here is our, good evening, everybody. It's great to see everybody. Here is our bond improvement update for October 12th, 2020. Agenda tonight, project updates, and then we're going to review the proposal for the bleachers for New Baxter. First, Brainerd High School. Area 2 is wrapping up the exterior work and continuing lobby sheetrock. The auditorium concrete and rough-ins are continuing. Area 10 pool excavation is ongoing. We're also starting the formwork and the concrete work in the pool excavation. Area 5 and 6 were finishes stage for connecting link and pouring slabs at new CTE wing. Terrazzo will begin in portions of the building next week.
Awesome.
So lots of things going on. Any questions on the high school?
Damien, with all that work on the pool, it's so exposed, like, will you have a tent over it during the winter, or, because it won't be enclosed by the winter, right?
Correct. We're not going to be, I don't think we're going to be closed till late January. So we'll definitely have to contend with the weather, and we'll take it as it comes. But, using ground blankets, and, we'll be looking at maybe, some ground heaters if necessary. So I know the team has a plan in place. I know Scott's listening, so hopefully he's nodding his head. But but the team does have a plan in place for addressing the weather as it comes. So, but you're right, Bob. It's gonna, end of this week it looks a little nasty. So I think the warm days are gone. Okay. South Campus design development is progressing. Continuing coordination between the electrical, architectural, and mechanical spaces. And then we have some upcoming meetings. We're working on. We have a finishes meeting tomorrow afternoon, and then we have a City of Brainerd meeting on Wednesday.
And can we get the photo updated for that event? I know the wrong one was in the paper too.
Okay.
So
Absolutely.
I noticed that too.
Yeah.
New Baxter Elementary. I'm gonna let Justin go ahead and review his projects.
Good evening, everyone. New Baxter Elementary, it shows their punch list is basically complete. The internal punch list that we generated right off the bat is complete, and we're working on some new items that are kind of popping up with a brand new building. Continuing with commissioning, that'll be about a year from now until we're truly complete with that. Gym number 2 flooring is actually going to be done. They're going to be commencing next week. And we will be discussing today change event number 12, which was the added bleachers. Just a quick snapshot on that. What that entails is relocating the current bleachers that we have installed from gym number 1 to the added gym number 2, and then purchasing a 312 capacity bleacher system for gym number 1, and that would be a power bleacher as well. So, yeah. That's it for New Baxter.
Any questions on New Baxter? Okay.
Nisswa Elementary, that east storm work that we talked about a while back, that has commenced, and we're hoping to have that wrapped up sometime next week. Punch list, we're down about 90% complete of the punch list, and we're also working on commissioning there as well of the HVAC systems. Warrior Early Learning Center. We're in week number 3, and by the end of this week, we're anticipating interior building demolition basically being complete. The exterior, that exterior building, or the building we demoed, that's gone. Looks like it was never there. And we have started with rough-ins. So that project's progressing nicely, and we have a real good team of contractors on the project.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions for Justin? Okay. Keep moving. Harrison Elementary, the punch list work is ongoing. We're 94% complete. HVAC commissioning is ongoing, and then the mural vinyl wallpaper will be installed over MEA. So that'll be exciting to see and kind of get the finishing touches in place. Garfield, exterior finishes will be completed in the next few weeks. Interior vestibule aluminum caulking and install will be completed during MEA. Those are the doors that got held up by parts and pieces during COVID. Then punch list work is ongoing. They're currently 73% complete on the first phase. And then they're working on HVAC commissioning as well. Lowell Elementary, stud framing is being installed in the admin area along with the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing rough-ins. Brick veneer at the new main entrance is completed. Curb and gutter at 3rd Avenue, they're working on that. Finished curtain wall system at the classroom tower, so the windows are in now, so you can see that. And then finished the roof membrane for the new addition. Things are progressing well. They're getting ready to hang drywall, so we'll start seeing the classroom tower getting drywall hung here at the beginning of next week, and finishes to follow. So we're starting to get close to seeing that stage 1 of that project get close to completion.
Damien, the curved walkway, is that the sidewalk by
Yeah.
Lowell?
Yep.
Oh, okay. I mean, why isn't it straight? You know, where it's perpendicular versus curved. Is there a reason for that?
Now without pulling out the drawings, Mark is gone on vacation, but I mean, it's just by design. It's by the entrance.
Oh, okay.
And maybe even Reed wants to chime in on it, but that has to do with by the dumpster enclosure area.
Yes.
That would be like where the parent drop-off booth is coming around
Yep.
that side.
Oh, okay.
Probably swinging back around and coming back onto the Third Street side there.
Are all the sidewalks gonna be curved like that around it?
I don't believe so.
Because they use it as a track. I know that. When they run,
Oh.
they do the mile run, they don't run on the street, they run on the sidewalk.
That'll be nice for that.
Yeah.
If it was all
Absolutely.
curved, yeah.
It looks nice.
Mhm.
Riverside Elementary, interior painting at Area B, AST, staff lounge, and new gym. That's taking place there. Carpet installation, Area B, AST, and staff lounge. Irrigation systems being installed. Casework in Area B and AST, staff lounge is being installed. Exterior door paint and the new gym. Basically, we're about 2 weeks away from being complete with Riverside with stage 1. So that's wrapping up nicely. That's everything I have.
I have one question,
Sure, Sue.
and I know we kind of touched on it at Project Oversight. With the addition of these bleachers that you're wanting to put into Baxter, will it be equal at the other schools where they have similar amounts for the size, or is it in our standards so that they'll be close to the same?
It'll be much closer. I think Tammy was really surprised when the bleachers that were in Gym 1 were 108 seat, because that wouldn't hold her whole elementary school. But we needed the bleachers for the second gym anyway. So we just said it would be easy to move these bleachers into that gymnasium if they're playing a game, because that's a smaller gym anyway. And then there's plenty of room for the 312. But I think that was just something she took for granted, that it was going to be plenty of bleachers for her entire elementary in the first gym. But
And the other elementaries will be similar to that, so that we're not.
well, some of the
favoring one or
elementaries
other?
have a lot more, like Riverside has large amounts of seating, but I think the biggest thing is that you could set all of your kids on bleachers if you had a lyceum or an
Sure.
activity going on. And she feels very comfortable with the amount of seating that her kids can do that with the 312.
Okay.
All right, thank you, guys. So that is actually our first action item, is to approve the work order change, or CE 129, which is adding the bleachers in New Baxter.
I'll move to approve CE 129, adding 312 capacity set of powered bleachers for Gymnasium 1 at Baxter Elementary, not to exceed $71,500.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Director Nystrom, second by Director Campbell for approval of CE 129 as presented. Any further discussion? If not, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next up is approval of resolution regarding some property. I don't know. Looks like Reed's going to give us a little update on this.
bring all my stuff, and I'm making less trips back to the desk.
Thanks, Justin.
So the resolution in front of you here is a recommendation from our legal counsel with the sale of the house at Lowell. So one of the action steps that we should do as a board whenever we're dealing with excess property is to pass a resolution that states that it is going to be disposed of, and it has no longer any value to the school district for any of our operations. So that's what the resolution is in front of you here, is just a formality to declare that property excess property so that we can dispose of it, or sell it, I should say.
Okay. Thank you, Reed.
I'll move the resolution.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Director Nelson, second by Director Nystrom for approval of the resolution as presented. Any discussion?
So what is the status as far as when it's going to be moved?
So Michael Duvall and myself, we have a bill of sale agreement, and he's hoping to have it out of there by the last day of November, excuse me, so.
Any other discussion? If not, we'll have a roll call.
Reed Campbell,
Yes.
Tom Hageland,
Yes.
Sue Kern,
Yes.
Ruth Nelson,
Yes.
Bob Nystrom,
Yes.
Charles Blacklands,
Yes.
all in favor.
Thank you. Next up will be approval of retiring policy 810. So we have a new district facilities and equipment policy that's already been approved, and this would be retiring the old policy number 810. I'd entertain a motion.
I so move.
I'd take a second also.
Second.
I thought they were going to present something, so I was waiting for that to happen.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right, so we have a motion by Director Campbell, second by Director Nelson for approval of retiring policy 810, which is an old policy regarding district facilities and equipment. Any further discussion? Not, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Last discussion item that we have is facility usage discussion. Of course, we went through the last couple of meetings regarding facilities and the use and fees and those kinds of things. This is an opportunity for us as a board to talk about the physical use beyond, I guess, district programs, although maybe that's not properly worded, but this would be like for the BYAA lace of the football that we heard from Wade earlier. So it's an opportunity for the board to have a discussion on, because it's been brought to us several times, and to get some feedback from all of you on what your thoughts are and whether we allow or don't allow for that type of activities during these times. And I don't know, Lane, if you wanted to share, if you had something you wanted to share, or if we just want to open it for
I
discussion.
will share just something real small, and then I know Corey and Reed are prepared if you have more questions. But it's so amazing how timely this is, because just Thursday morning, MDE came out with changes saying that we could open up for additional activities with all kinds of protocols in place, and how many people you could have for attendance and all of those things. And just on Thursday, that happened, along with opening up indoor facilities for sports events such as volleyball. And Charlie Campbell, because people were so excited about this Thursday morning and the fact that this opened up by Thursday night, he had fans in the gymnasium watching the volleyball game. It can only be 2 per player, for a mom and dad, or for 2 people, and they have to sign up ahead of time so they know who's there in case that you have to contact trace or anything like that. There's a lot of protocols in place, but he already put that, got that in place. Today, we had a nice meeting during exec meeting this morning, and Reed and Corey have together a plan meeting the guidelines that came about just on Thursday of how we feel that we could do this safely. And what's kind of fun is it really kind of aligns with what Wade talked about today when he came for public comment. And so I'd like to, if it's okay, I'll just turn it over to you guys and, or the board if you want to talk about it first and ask them
Well, I
questions.
think that'd be great if there's some further updates.
Corey, are you online?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay. This morning we had a really good conversation, as Lane mentioned, on August 18th when the state of Minnesota released their first safe learning plan. It did call out the criteria upon which, it talks about in here that our facilities are so important to those clubs and those youth programs that go on within our communities. But they left the details pretty vague in that first plan. They just got the foundation out there. And with that, along with the construction constraints that we had across all of our gymnasiums in these facilities, we still are using a good number of our gymnasiums for learning spaces during the day. You can imagine how hard it would be to tear all that furniture out every night just to host a singular practice, right? So we had to make some really hard decisions on what we had available to us. We had some conversations back when we approved the district-wide safe learning plan that we created and drafted off of this language that really limited it to Tom. We talked about essential visitors and essential business to the school district, and we had to make the hard decision at that point on where do we draw the line of how many people are we bringing in. So at that point, you recall conversations going on that we weren't inviting in any people that normally would use our auditoriums or any of our gymnasiums. We just put a pause to all of that until we could get some better guidance on how we would handle all that. And as Lane mentioned, on Thursday they just released an update to that plan, which clearly defines spectators and participants and what that criteria and guidelines are for how we manage the safe use of those facilities. So I think we had a really good meeting this morning, and Corey and I, we put together some stuff. And Corey, do you have something you want to share with the board tonight? A PowerPoint or some bullets here that we wanted to show them?
I didn't do a PowerPoint, but I did put together just sort of a protocol sheet, I guess. Just really with the steps for how this would work. So I combed through the new guidance we just got on Thursday, as Lance said, and just have a step-by-step process, which it really is the regular process with the addition of requiring anyone who's using our facilities to submit to us a preparedness plan, basically outlining how they're going to make sure that nobody sick attends, ensuring people are wearing face coverings when they need to, sticking to the 25% capacity or the capacity limits and all that stuff. So I just put together a sheet that, pending the outcome of this discussion, if the board feels comfortable moving forward with opening up the facilities, that we will start to do that fully.
Okay, well, that's great news.
Corey, something you probably didn't see is that Wade brought it's called the Assumption of Risk, Release and Waiver Liability Indemnity Agreement relating to COVID. It might be something that you could look at what you've developed and look at what they have developed. Because it sounds like we're both on the same page as far as just trying to assure that we're following the protocols that are necessary.
Yeah, and it also, Corey says she lost sound here as well, so she's not hearing us.
Okay.
Justin's on it back there. So that's exactly right, Lane. A lot of these updated bullets that are in here, it does talk about that these groups and youth organizations that we're going to ask them and require them to provide their COVID preparedness plans, and in those then too would be potential waivers that would help us manage who's coming in. It clearly articulates no walk-ins, no random visits from people, that we really need to be thoughtful and methodical about who's coming in and when they're visiting. It does talk about that during practices we can't have visitors, but then when we do games or a tournament, that we would ticket and track who's coming into the facilities so that we're managing that. Still one of the challenges that we're going to face though is a little bit around our space, again, going back to the construction side of things, we're gonna work, we can, after our conversation tonight, we can definitely start entertaining, where are we having these things at? Are we gonna continue to have them at Forest View or the high school? We can't at Lowell because we're using the gymnasium as classroom space. Harrison, half of it's used for classroom space storage. So we'll have to be really methodical about where we're having stuff at, and we'll ramp up as we go into that. You heard before, one of the other challenges we have too, though, is making sure we're cleaning and disinfecting. So, we already had a staff that had a full plate one before COVID. And then what we did is we took some of their non-priority cleaning activities off and said, you are going to focus on disinfecting the building with this other available time. Now we're adding in more load to that staff on top of what we have currently available to us. We've talked about overtime. I know that Wade and Darren have talked about, coming up with a way to help cost share for that, or paying for cleaners, or doing something along those lines. We'll definitely engage them with what that looks like. But I will tell you right now, if we think that we can just absorb that with our own team, our buildings and grounds crews are really stretched very, very thin right now. And if we think we want to try and tackle more of this, we're going to have to be real creative about how we come up with ways to free up that capacity. I'm working on a few of those things right now to try and get more capacity within the department. But at some point, it's really just going to come down to we just need labor to be able to go and do those things. We've had postings out there for custodial, so for anybody that's listening, if you're looking for work for custodial, we're taking applicants right now still we have a couple open positions, and we always need subs, and we always need help across the board. So, we're actively looking and we're recruiting, and I know Travis and Angie have been great for getting us people in there, but it's really going to come down to we got to make sure the buildings are clean too, because otherwise we're going to be talking about it with Heidi and Angie when we start looking at COVID numbers within our school. So we just want to be real careful about that as well.
Right, I want to mention too that we did on the protocol sheet we worked on today, we did leave the door open for perhaps like a surcharge for the additional cleaning and disinfecting that would be required. We don't need to figure that out at this exact moment, but I just want everyone to know that we're leaving that option open, knowing that we have the staffing concern exists.
Well, that's great. So with this news and things that have opened up, it sounds like you're ready to move forward. A lot of work to do yet, coordination, but you're ready to move forward with BYA and the others.
Yeah. I think one thing that we should potentially consider, and we didn't really get a chance to really vet this thoroughly, but with Lane and Corey here online, I think we might want to revisit and maybe amend our district-wide safe learning plan, because it does talk about those essential visitors only. We may want to change that one or two lines in that safe learning plan that we have advertised that says now where it'll match up with our youth clubs and our youth activities that are important to our district, that we might align to allow them in. Because if we leave it as essential visitors, we're kind of breaking our own rule in a way. So I think we might want to amend that and bring it back to you at another board meeting, just to make sure we clear that verbiage up.
Sure, okay.
And actually, we can update that as early as tomorrow or whenever you feel like you're ready to do that.
Sure.
Because as all these changes come from MD, we're trying to be in compliance with our manual.
Sure.
At all times, we just update and just say this is the updated edition. So
Sure, perfect.
be happy to do that.
And that's understandable as we've got to be flexible as they're making the changes left and right, that we're able to be flexible with that as well. So, well, that's great news. I don't know that we necessarily need to take any board action then.
No.
You guys, you're good to go, and
I do have a few clarifiers.
Sure.
I'm excited about where the leadership is heading, and I'm definitely in support of that. A few thoughts is that as we look forward to potentially here opening up the at least the gymnasiums to things such as BBA and BYAA basketball and I don't know if BBA has mentioned this at all, and I don't even know if I would necessarily need an answer tonight, if we need to process it tonight, but just the idea of a potential fundraiser, which would be like a tournament, that type of thing, that would we have the flexibility to do that in our school district. I think they usually have their tournament probably beginning of February. But when we look at access and opportunity for students, again, to be able to not just be able to get into the gyms, but then to be able to have access to this wonderful opportunity, it does take money. And is that something that would be on the table for potential discussion? Again, not necessarily needing an answer on that, but I just want to be clear, or is that completely off the board?
I think from my perspective, from a facilities standpoint, the practices piece of it, I don't see as daunting of a hurdle here. The practices is stuff that we're doing already anyways when our kids are using the facilities, or we're using the facilities during the day, right? We have 2,000 kids at Forest View that use those gyms previous to COVID during the day. We had practices that would come in the evenings, and so buildings and ground staff, our cleaners in that area already clean from 9 p.m. until 6 a.m. So the practices piece of it, Charles, I don't think are as much of a problem for me, especially when we start limiting it, saying, hey, in practices, no parents inside the building, drop your kids off, come into practice, and away you go, right? So I don't see that as big of a hurdle to get over here. I do think that tournaments, from my perspective, with Corey and I working together, we'd have to just figure out a way, how are we setting the expectations that these organizations are managing the rules and guidelines that are in front of them. I don't think it's off the table as long as they come up with a good plan and we have an opportunity to vet that plan and make sure that it meets our expectations with use of the facilities, right? So I think there's definitely some leeway there to have a conversation with them and be creative and figure out a way that'll work for all of us to still pull off those things that are important to the community, like fundraisers, like these tournaments that we talk about. It's just going to be a lot more work this year coming up, but I don't think it's insurmountable by any means. So
that's great. I know just from experience that both my daughters, 13-year-old and 11-year-old, have been playing at Armstrong High School down in Plymouth. And they've been playing, they're getting to know me quite well down there. I've been down there six weekends in a row participating in tournaments. And the nice thing about that is my wife and I are, believe it or not, a little jittery of this whole thing. We don't want our kids to be somewhere where they're not safe. But because this organization that put on these tournaments, they make you leave after every game. You need to go back out, and then they clean everything down, including the rails and all of that. And then they funnel you back in. And it's only two parents per player. And it's been a really good experience for us. But I would hope that that would be a potential discussion item or a potential opportunity for those organizations. The last thing that I wanted to throw out is also the other piece. From what I've learned being down at Armstrong High School is under distance learning, completely distance learning right now. And so my understanding is they're out all the way until January, I think, is the decision that they're under. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is I just want to make sure that we could have think about this as a board, that I would really like to distance learning proof this discussion that we're having, meaning that this isn't just a discussion we're having where it would only work under hybrid, though. Would it also work and still be able to, would BBA and these other organizations be able to use the facility if we're at a full distance learning style as well?
I think what happened with a lot of those schools in the cities, because they knew how complex it was going to be to try to run a hybrid model where you bring students in and hard on staffing and everything, that many schools just went into distance learning right from the start. They just said, that's just what we're going to do. And then they could play sports and do all those kinds of things because there weren't any parameters in there saying, you're doing this because your COVID cases are high or because there's an outbreak in your school. And so they've been able to do that. What the manual says is that when the COVID cases get so high that you have to go into distance learning, then you can't have extracurricular activities. And so that's the difference, is they just decided from the start that they weren't even going to try in person. And then they could have sports and activities. So, like this is an example, and this isn't happening, but if we said today we were gonna go into distance learning on Monday just because we think it's the right thing to do, then we still could have sports. But if we're doing it because the numbers are bad and it looks like it's not gonna be a safe environment, then you can't do it. Does that make sense? Why?
I guess it, I mean, I hear what you're saying, I don't know if I'm on the same page as that necessarily.
I know, that's why a lot of the city schools that are big like we are, they chose to go that route right from the beginning. There aren't many schools our size that decided to do the hybrid, and we did it because we valued our students being in touch with theirs. And so it's something, and who knows, the manual could change before we end up having to address something like that again.
Yeah, I think, Charles, I mean, you bring up a good point, and I think we're just going to have to take it a week at a time. You know, hopefully the intent is that before long, we're getting kids more back into the classroom versus the other way around. And then we're still subject to interpretation, even under the current guideline where it says limit non-essential. Well, who defines what that is? So there's still a discretion, and that's, I think, part of the reason why the governor gave the individual districts to try to work at your own level. And you know, we've already discussed, we've got an amazing team that's on top of this and doing a great job. So hopefully, not only can we get back with these other groups, but that we can just continue with that.
The other thing that I'm thinking too is that I was really encouraged on Friday when we met with that whole team of people, because they really want to work with us. And like I said to them, you know, I've been reading about Sibley East and some of those places that are getting in real trouble because of choices that they're making, and they're having to go back. And they said, but what we've noticed with Brainerd is that you've been on top of it from day one. And so they were really willing to work with us as long as we knew exactly what the data points were and such. And so I don't know, I kind of feel like if we ended up having to go to distance learning for some reason, but it wasn't affecting athletics, it's at least a conversation that we felt that we could have the conversation. And what MDE said is, if you guys are trying, we don't want to be the police here. We want to work with you, with your schools, and do what we can. And so I agree with Tom. I think we just have to give it a little bit of time, see what happens, and then we at least have the contacts and the networking in place that we can have the conversations and see how we can make this work best for Brainerd. But,
Right, thank
and
you.
I appreciate that, so, yeah.
Well, good. That's
And back to the question on the use of the facilities, and like BYAA had done a lot of work, to set up their protocol and this waiver deal and stuff like that, but again, we're not gonna have to have our staff make sure how many people are coming into the building and stuff, and
Well, that was definitely one of our concerns. I mean, we definitely need to give them the criteria. So when we talk about, let's just use Forest View for an example, and we look at when we roll our bleachers out in Forest View, we definitely have to make sure that we've got all of our distance markings on those bleachers, right? And we give the organizations that are using the facilities, you want to use Field House 4, you can have 50 people in that field house, including participants, or whatever the numbers are. We need to provide that data to them. But then that was one of the conversations we had this morning of who is enforcing that. I think what we will end up doing is, when we have these conversations with each group, is set the expectation that you need to have your plan, and in that plan, we're expecting you to adhere to these guidelines. We are going to be following up to make sure that you are following those guidelines and, going through that process, which they submit to us. But we're not going to be there to enforce it and to say, hey, you get too many people coming in. We're going to expect them to do it. And then if things get out of line, we'll definitely have to have a conversation and say, hey, here's where we need to make some adjustments. So.
but who's gonna be watching that?
Well, as I
I
coach
can
BYA.
speak to Reed's question.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Corey.
I heard Reed ask who would be doing that, and at this point, I have it set up as part of the facility request process. So you fill out a form to request, for instance, the gym to use with your dates and times, and then there's a statement at the end of that saying you now need to go and fill out a preparedness plan. So before my staff and community ed would approve a a request, we would look to make sure we have a completed form, a completed preparedness plan. We would connect with lead staff and buildings and grounds to make sure we have the staff to actually staff it before we would even approve it. So that's kind of the checks that we go through.
Great.
What I did is, that Wade Hopajoki had referenced earlier, BYAA, they had a similar plan that we're talking about. I was a coach of one of the teams, and we had a COVID coach, like he referenced. So before the child could even get to the playing field, the COVID coach was out there. They had to get temperature checked, hand sanitized, all that type of stuff before they could enter into the practice area. But also then it was a COVID coach that was kind of the mother lioness then that made sure that the parents, his parents wanted to coach sometimes. It's like, nope, you can't come in here, and all that type of stuff. So plus, Tim Hill put the fear of God in us as coaches to make sure that we did this, because if we didn't, then we don't play. So the checks and balances kind of took care of itself. But I thought it was a really good, and again, my son played, and I felt safe.
All right, very good. Thank you. It's great news.
Thanks, Corey.
It was an easy discussion.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lane.
It was just so timely. Midway Thursday morning, we
yeah.
met, and then not an hour later, here come the new guidelines. So
Yeah, good.
it's so funny.
All right, we'll move right into our informational. We'll start with Brandon Public Schools Foundation report from Director Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, the foundation met the other day and met at the outside location, and maybe they can get back in here someday too, but they did go over the Warrior Homecoming Run. They had a great participation, like 237 participants, which was, very good number for a virtual run, so that came off very good. The giving campaign, they didn't have many pledge cards so far, so I think they talked about doing some more promoting within the schools and stuff, and I know Lane was gonna work on that too, so. The Dream Big update from last year, they have purchased all the books, so they've purchased like 2,000 some books, and so those will start getting distributed. And, let's see, the grant cycle is going kind of slow right now. The teachers are all pretty busy and understandable, so we hadn't had a whole lot of requests there yet. And the big thing was, and Lane was there to speak about, what's happening and the cases that are going on in our schools. And the big decision was to change the big event to have that run as virtual too, as commented in here before. So, I missed anything else, Lane?
That's everything.
All right, thank you, Reed.
Mm-hmm.
And next, we're going to have an Equity Advisory Task Force update from Director Blackline.
Okay, I've had the opportunity to be part of the equity task force that the school districts have put together for the last couple months, 2-3 months, I guess. And we've had a couple, two, maybe 3 meetings. And they've been really helpful and really exciting, to be quite honest with you, in terms of the effort that's put forth. And then also just with the overall membership. Won't go necessarily into that, but just so you know, there's a number of different members from throughout the community, but also the school district. And from where I sit, I'm quite pleased at that, just that groundswell of support for this type of group. One thing I wanted to share with you quickly is just a few of the areas where the ground that we've covered. put the group together, and I really appreciate Lane and her team, and Heidi and others and Tim. Put together, I think we met, within the first week that Lane thought that this would be a good idea, and we started getting things moving. So we've covered a lot of ground, I feel, all the way from introductions to now just starting to put rubber meets the road type of things. With that being said, some of the areas that we really need to be looking at from where I sit, and or as part of my report, is just really looking at making sure that this particular task force is on the same page on basic items such as equity and inclusion. Some of those basic pieces, and I won't unpack that right now, but what does that mean? What is that to you? And we need to make sure that we're all pulling in the same direction. So that's one of the areas that we've been working on, and just making sure that we are all pulling in the same direction. With that being said, there's a few matters that are really important to discuss relating to equity and inclusion. And what I mean by that is that how are we going to fasten the tip of our efforts? Where do we start first, in other words? And I don't have those particular answers right here and right now, but that's one of the main pieces that we've been looking at is where do we start? One of the things that I have taken away from the group is it's really going to be a top-down type of process. With all these matters when it comes to equity and inclusion, it's going to be really important that part of that tip starts right here with those of us in this room. That we start by not necessarily just being educated, there might be a part of that, but making sure that we as a school board are pulling in the same direction as this as well. And that's one of the important things. Because this task force isn't going to be able to really grab the traction that they need if they don't have us pushing appropriately and encouraging them from our particular seat. And then finally, it's really important then to be looking at maybe administration. Even before we look at educating and working to bring everybody in the same direction, we need our leadership to be pulling in the same direction as well. Finally, some other things just a couple last things I took from the particular meeting is we need to be making sure that we're on the same page as a school district in terms of retention and recruitment of people of color. So, and not just in an effort to make it a safe landing place for students, which is really important. People of color, people of different ethnic backgrounds, religious backgrounds, that type of thing. But also to make sure that the Brainerd School District is a place where we can provide a safe landing for those professionals as well. In other words, one of my final comments is, it's really important for my children to have somebody on board professionally, either a teacher or an aide or a person in the cafeteria that looks like them, okay? And that's one of some of the more basic stuff that we need to be looking at as a school district. And those are some of the items that we're really kind of mulling over right now. I don't have all the answers. We don't have all the answers, but I do believe, like Lane has said about the COVID crisis, that we're starting to get the proper players in place to be able to start moving this forward. So I'm pretty excited. Really appreciate Lane's leadership on getting this off the ground, and really appreciate the board here and your support of making this happen as well. And I hope that people in the community feel that this is a really good start, and I'm really excited about it.
Great. Very good. Well, that's great. Thank you, Charles. What is the, do you have a regular scheduled meetings, or how frequently are you getting together as that group?
Well, we met October 6th, and our next meeting is November 10th. So right now, we're kind of looking every month or every other month or something like that. But with the early out and such, it's really working well for our teachers that are on the team, because it fits within their duty day as well. And so we've had a beautiful turnout the last two meetings. And so, yeah, we're really excited about that.
Could I ask how many people of color are on the?
People of color, I'd probably say, not a question I typically ask, and in this day and age, it's kind of hard to tell. But I'd probably say 3.
Okay.
Maybe 4, but 3 for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is, for Brainerd, that's a really good number. I mean, it's a really good percentage. So.
We have, just so the board knows, we have a couple of teachers, we have a couple of administrators on the team. One of them is Sheila Eller, our brand new principal at Riverside, who has been a principal all over the nation and really has some great input. She was bringing some nice input the other day about just some of her experiences. We've got students, Tim, Heidi, myself, of course, then Mary Sam from the college, and we've got some parents. Yeah, we just got a really nice team of people on this committee, so.
You know, one thing that I would just like to add, Lane and Tom, if that's, or Director Hagelin, if that's okay, is that just a couple things to be working on with this type of matter. And the one thing that's important for the board to hear, for some of us, and I hate to admit this, but I'm probably more of a grizzled veteran now for this type of work than I am a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed type of person, as I'm 48 now. But there is some of that general thought with the school district that, we have to start over again with this type of thing. Because there have been efforts in the past, and even predating Lane, where, there have been groups or entities that have tried that. And so that's some place that we're gonna have to go as a group too, as we're gonna have to name that, own that, and then move on. But it's an effort that can really be disheartening at times when you feel like you're, I've been to this spot in the woods already. I've been here before. So, it's really important, I hope that the board realizes that, and but also encourages us in our work. And the final thing is, I don't know if I've seen donuts at every meeting, but I'm hopeful.
You can't go there.
Yeah, we can't, yeah.
Charles, your wife is,
Nope, not yet, not yet.
Charles, your wife is listening.
And she said no.
All right, thank you for that report. Very, very helpful. All right. Hi, Marcy. Business service report.
So
Marcy didn't bring donuts for us either.
one of these nights I'm going to walk in with some. In your packet is the enrollment report. It's as of October 5th. And as you can see, we are down 145 from the budget. And then I pulled last year's. So from the beginning of September, we were down 7. And last year, we were down 13 at this point. So I'll continue to give you updates on where we're tracking as compared to last year. Of those 6,199 kindergarten through 12th, 1,185 are distance learners, just an FYI. And I wanted to give you an update. The CRF application has been substantially approved. That's the $1.7 million that we received in CARES funding. We do have to send in a couple of equipment requests to get those approved as well, but it is substantially approved, so that's good. Audit is next week, so after that wraps up, I'll follow up with the fund balance summary so you guys can see how that year ended. And then this afternoon, Lane and I were in a presentation put on by MREA for their proposal that they're going to put in for the funding in the upcoming years, and it was, Lane and I are very hopeful. It was very, some of the changes proposed could benefit Brainerd, so hopefully they come to fruition.
Can I ask one question on the enrollment report? It was interesting to me that the elementary and the high school went up from the month before, but the middle school went down, and I'm just wondering if we should reach out to any of those families and find out what's going on there a little bit.
So whenever they leave, we do take, information if they will supply it. So when they leave, they have to fill out a form, and there is a comment, but if they don't complete that, then we don't have any information on why they left.
I just found that interesting, so.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting on the elementary piece. That's our greatest loss. And, whether it's parents that say we don't want our kids in school at all, and so they left, or whether it's parents that said, well, I want my grade school in school all day, and that's why I had to pull them out. And I know I've heard from a few that that's been a greater challenge because they're done at 1:30 or 2 or something like that. But it's in our elementary that we've had the greatest loss.
Yeah, I was just looking from this month.
Yeah, from one month to the next, yeah.
Yeah. And kindergarten, I can totally understand. If I had a kindergarten, I probably would have considered
And we've
holding.
got the numbers on distance learning from 1 week to the next, actually, so we could see pretty closely if those middle school kids went to distance learning or homeschool. We
But
could.
if they were in distance learning, they'd still be in here.
Oh, you're right,
Correct.
they would be there.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah, these are kids that are completely, and I can understand the kindergarten as well, but that's
Yeah.
50 out of the 300 or whatever,
Yeah.
roughly. 200 drop. And that's where I kind of wonder where they
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
Look at the middle school.
At the next report, I can follow up with what our homeschool numbers were last year compared to this year.
Okay.
Yep.
And if there's
Good.
any
Good.
questions?
Any other questions for Marcy?
I'd like to talk just a little bit about that thing that we were on, and I don't know a lot about it. All I know is a year or so ago, when Tom Melcher was still the Director of Finance at MDE, they had been talking for years about changing the formula system for funding schools. And because ours are so complex, he's like the only person in the state that truly understands all the formulas and such that you use in those different categories. But he pulled together a team of people to take a look at education funding as it was and what are some modifications that they could make that wouldn't be a huge factor for taxpayers and such, but it would help give some support and some help to schools, particularly to schools like us who don't have an operating levy referendum. How can they help make that happen? And that's what Marcy was saying. We were kind of hopeful because we could see where if all of these things that they put in place were put in place, that it could really help us. But with COVID right now, we don't know if they would ever bring it through the legislature to make these kinds of changes at this time because it'll cost some additional money. But we sat in the meeting and then we visited afterwards that, boy, it would be nice if this really happened. There was just one thing that we had some questions on, but we're hopeful, but we're cautious too, because we understand where the state is at right now and everybody because of COVID. And so even if it was a few years from now, it would still be helpful to the school district moving forward. So, yeah. But I'm glad they did it.
Yeah,
Glad they did the
yeah.
work.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Marcy. Next up is Superintendent's report.
Right, most of the things that I have been talked about today. Again, the Safe Learning Plan, it is kind of interesting, and we talked about that, how it changes, just about every week we're finding out something, and we'll just keep on top of that and keep you informed as we move forward. Also, Angie Hamilton, our COVID coordinator, will be starting on Thursday. And so, look at Heidi, she's pretty excited. And so we're excited to have her. She's going to be a great addition to the team. So that'll be wonderful. The big event, the one thing we didn't say was the theme hook, line, and sinker. I think so. And anyway, they're looking at doing some really kind of cool things this year that I think could be beneficial to the foundation, and that is that they're going to have like boxes where you can order, like from Prairie Bay, you can order meals for your whole family, and then you pick them up and you bring them home, and you do like the online auction, and there's all these things online. But we're hoping that it becomes more of a family event, which we think it could be kind of a neat change just for 1 year. And when the board approved it, it was just for 1 year to do it this way. But anyway, what a bunch of creative people.
Yeah, a lot of great ideas got thrown around. It's like, whoa, that's great.
I know, yeah, it
Very
was.
good.
Yeah, they just all of a sudden, okay, we're gonna make this fun, and it's gonna be neat. So, I just want to remind the board also that Ed Minnesota Days are this Thursday and Friday. So, it'll be kind of quiet around the school district on those days, and then November 3rd will be Election Day. So, for the Board of Education. So, good luck. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And of course, there's a number of upcoming meetings as well that's in your board packet. Any other business to come before the board?
Move to adjourn?
Did you second it? Great. Motion by Director Campbell, second by Director Blacklands to adjourn. All in
Really?
favor, say aye.
Oh,
Aye.
awesome. Hour and 15 minutes. Boom.